The chips go Gus Hansen's way, and Hansen now with a decided lead in chip count. As you can see, almost a complete reversal.
Yeah, and that hand, Barry, Fricke could have made some sort of reasonable raise. Hansen only opened for 450,000. Fricke could have made it 900,000 more or something, not 4 million.
But Gus Hansen will kindly accept the gift bestowed upon him by Jimmy Fricke. Looking at a pair of deuces, and he will call. Fricke at 10-5. He'll check.
Gus Hansen has now had 2 huge all-in confrontations, both times with the best of it.
Here's the flop, and whoa, what a flop for Fricke.
Trip 5s. And I like this betting out.
125,000.
It looks weak, looks like he's just taking a stab at the pot. The last hand Gus gives him right now is a 5.
And Gus calls. It is a 9 on the turn.
I think Fricke should keep betting.
And he will. 400,000 to bet for Fricke. And Gus not going to get away from it. He's going to call.
Hansen's trusting his read. Jimmy Fricke has a customer.
So we come to the river. It is a 7 on the river.
Fricke determining the value bet amount that he can get Gus Hansen to pay off.
He is going to bet 1 million chips. Now, can Gus Hansen get away from this hand?
He has merely a pair of deuces, but all along he's believed in his read. And if he continues to believe in it, it's going to cost him a hefty portion of his stack.
He calls.
Trips.
Trips, says Fricke, and that is bad news for Gus Hansen. So Fricke will get a little something back. It has been a most entertaining heads-up battle for all the money here. Back and forth for the title, but remember, only one of these two will walk away with that crystal trophy and more than $1 million. Who'll it be as the Aussie Millions continues? Aussie Millions, it has been a battle between Jimmy Fricke and Gus Hansen as Hansen doubled up early.
It's got to be very even right now.
But Fricke stayed alive, catching lightning on the river.
That was a big one.
Now we're one step closer to crowning the Aussie Millions champion. And as you can see right now, a pretty healthy lead for Gus Hansen over Jimmy Fricke, almost a 2-to-1 edge in chip count.
The good news for Fricke, however, with blinds at 60 and 120, he doesn't need to panic.
Hansen looking at a Jack 10, and he will call. Fricke Queen
Check.
6, he'll check. So a free flop for Jimmy Fricke. And on the flop, King Deuce Queen.
Intriguing flop. Fricke makes middle pair. Gus Hansen up and down straight draw.
Fricke is checked. Now Gus Hansen going to bet 120,000.
Pretty small bet. Obviously, Fricke's not going to fold. He might want to raise.
He calls. And we go to the turn. It is a 9 of diamonds.
That's the straight for Hansen.
And Fricke first to act. 300,000 into the teeth of Gus Hansen.
Unless Gus Hansen fears a flush draw, smooth calling here would look pretty good. Yep.
Merely calls with 300,000.
The trap is set.
And now the river is an ace.
Wow, gets even better for Gus Hansen. He now has the nut Broadway straight, the nut hand. And just as Fricke had to determine last hand how much he could extract, Gus Hansen will have to come up with a similar number.
And Hansen hardly hesitates. That's 1.1 million chips.
This would be a really tough call for Jimmy Fricke. And he does call, and he is going to lose a big pot.
Hansen shows the cards.
That's pretty good.
And Jimmy Fricke will go deeper into the hole against the veteran Hansen.
For a guy who claims to have Gus Hansen all figured out, Jimmy Fricke strikes me as rather confused at the moment.
And Gus Hansen's chip count has just risen. Almost the exact reverse of when we started head-to-head play.
At this point in the proceedings, I think Jimmy Fricke thought he would be celebrating a victory with his buddies.
And he's looking at a 9-7 suited now, and he will call. Oh dear.
Man. Gus Hansen, sometimes when it's going right, it is going right.
And what better time for it to go right than now? And Hansen raises to $350,000.
And Jimmy Fricke probably can't imagine this nice-looking suited connector hand is such a big underdog.
And Fricke will call.
Gus Hansen swallows hard and hopes his opponent gets a little piece.
Queen 8-6.
And that flop could be just enough to get Jimmy Fricke in trouble. He has picked up an open-ended straight draw. Gus Hansen leads out with the aces.
All in.
Fricke moves all in.
Call.
Instant call from Gus.
Flop top pair again.
It's better than that. With 2 cards to come, Gus Hansen is about a 2-1 favorite to win it all.
6.
Hansen has seen Fricke pull rabbits out of hats. Will the spell be broken?
Jimmy Fricke has been the Cinderella story of this event, and now will his carriage turn to a pumpkin? It's a deuce of clubs.
That's a sweat.
Wow, well, that's a good card for Fricke. He now has a flush draw as well. Any club, a 5 or a 10. Otherwise, Gus Hansen is the champion.
It's been more than 2.5 years since this man has won a major championship. He is now 1 card away. To the river. And that's it. Gus Hansen is the 2007 Aussie Millions champion.
I have good hands. Yeah, I could tell.
Gus Hansen wins $1.5 million Australian, 1.2 US for Jimmy Fricke. Biggest payday of his young career, $1 million Australian, and a memory to last a lifetime.
Once we got down to 3-hand, I just started destroying Andy and Gus, and I never had a hand and never made anything. I just felt like, it was mine to win. Then once we got heads up, things just started crumbling. He started flopping top pair. I started making some bad moves, and basically just never made a hand, and that was that.
So here's the way the money breaks down at our final table, and Michael, it has been quite a tournament.
For most of this wild ride, Jimmy Fricke had this field bamboozled, but in the end, Gus Hansen showed the upstart how to get it done.
In the beginning, I felt like, hey, I can gamble here. He's definitely the big favorite. And a couple of hands later, suddenly I had the big chip lead. And then we got a big pot, and it turned around again. So I just tried to stay calm and focus and play as good as I could. And in the end, the cards were my friend.
A record-setting field of 747 gathered in Melbourne to make history, and it was a roller coaster ride from the beginning. Yeah! 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 A hometown hero gave his fans something to cheer about. Yeah! But his dreams fell short, along with 2 other top pros.
I think that's it.
Andrew Black never blew up and nearly broke through.
Should I give the fans what they want?
As the heads-up battle between Jimmy Fricke and Gus Hansen became one for the ages. But in the end, the Great Dane found victory lane once again, and now has 1.5 million reasons to celebrate his Aussie Millions championship. For Michael Cohn.